Oh, hey, hi there. Nice to see you again. Glad you could make it. I was just remembering that story you told me. What a wonderful story. You're at the public accounting firm, and you get a call. The partner of the firm calls you into the office. Says, "Listen, I need to discuss something about you. There's this bigwig by the name of Joe, and he's a bigwig in town, and he's thinking about taking a minority interest in the local city's Major League Baseball team." And you're like, well, that's wonderful. That's nice. Maybe we can get a winning team now. Wouldn't that be great? Well, yeah, he's thinking about taking a position, and he wants to do some statistical analysis, and he's reached out for you. And you said, well, is he a client? Well, he's not a client yet, but he's thinking of becoming a client, and he would like to chat with you about a few things because apparently you have a reputation around town being able to do some statistical analysis more involved than present value financial analysis kind of things. Okay, all right, fine. So, you said, okay, well, what's he want me to do? Okay, well, apparently, there's conventional wisdom. She pulls out a piece of paper. Okay, this is what he wants you to do. Conventional wisdom says that a winning baseball team has to have a big salary. You have to be tops in payroll or you can't win. Track talent, you need a big salary. Is that conventional wisdom correct or is it incorrect? Can you test that? And secondly, if it is correct, how much of an impact would it make if you were to increase the salaries? Okay, well, that sounds like a good project. So what did you do? And you said, well, yeah, it did sound like an interesting project to me too. Yeah. So you went out and had to get data. First thing you got to get is data. So you went out and you found this website, www.fueledbysports.com/MLB-payrolls. And this had payrolls for all 30 Major League Baseball teams from the year 2000 to 2021. And you told me you decided to get the information for the past 12 years. So that was from 2010 through 2021. So you downloaded the information, it has the total payroll for each baseball team. You sorted it from top to bottom to get the highest to the lowest. And you have that for the 12 years. Then you also went out and you looked to see not just who was the World Series winner, but what were the 10 teams that went into postseason? Because that's what you want is a winning team, right? A winning team going into postseason. In 8 of those 10 years, there was 10 teams. In 2 of the years, there was 8 teams that goes in postseason. But anyway, and you do your analysis from that. And I said, well, what'd you do? And you told me, well, what you did was you divided those 30 teams into the top 10 highest paying teams, the middle highest paying teams, and the bottom, the lowest paying teams according to, payroll. And then you simply tabulated who were the winners in each year. You put a marking next to them, and then you drew a little chart. How did the winners, when I say winners, got into the postseason, the 10 teams in the postseason, how did they stack up against the payroll? Okay, I think I get it. Can you show me what you did? So, you put it right up here, and you showed how, for example, the payroll, 1 to 10 means that's the top 10. 11 to 20 is, the middle rung of payroll. 21 to 30 is the lowest paying people there. And you can see, for example, in 2021, of the 10 teams that went to postseason, 4 of them were in the top 10, payroll. And you also shared with me, look at that, if it was just randomness, you would expect an even spread, 3-3-3. You can't have a fractional 3.3, so it'd be 3s and 4s, right? In the years 2020, it looks kind of even. 2018, once again, it looks 4-4-3, that's kind of even. 2015 looks kind of even. Matter of fact, in 2013, you had more of the winners down on the lower end of the pool. 4 to 3, 3, 3, 4. Now, the other years, yes, it does look skewed up towards the higher paying teams, such as the year 2016. You have 6 in the highest payroll bracket, 3 in the middle, and 1 in the lowest. So in 6 out of 12 years, it does look random, and 6 it doesn't. And I said, well, that's interesting. So, where do you go from here? How do you test that? And you said, well, what you got to do is you got to conduct an ANOVA test. And of course I said, well, what's an ANOVA test? So you showed up here, I'll put up on the board. An ANOVA stands for analysis of variance. ANOVA tells you if there are any statistical differences between the means of 3 or more independent groups. And that's what we have. We have 3 groups, right? And so I said, well, how do you calculate the ANOVA? And she said, well, there's a formula. And a formula. Okay, just a minute. Let me let me get set here. Just a minute here, because I know that sometimes they get... Okay, I'm set. So what's the formula here? Well, right here, what you have to do for an ANOVA is you have to conduct an F-test. And for the F-test, you take the MST divided by the MSE, whereas the MST is the mean of sum of squares due to treatment, which means between the groups, between groups 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 1 and 3, divided by MSE, which is the mean sum of squares due to error, or within groups. The residual mean squares is the fancy term. Within groups, it means the variation from one year to the next, or from one period within that group. Okay, well, of course I said, can you do this in Excel? Because I'm guessing this is going to be a complicated formula. And you told me, yes, of course, that's how you did it. You did it in Excel. Well, how do you do it? So in Excel, you go to the Data tab, then you go to Data Analysis, you select ANOVA single factor, you select OK, and in the input range box, you select all of the data, including the headings. Then you'll have to select on either columns or rows, depending on how you organized your data. Click on the box for headings. If you selected the headings, which I do, and then you click on your alpha, which will default to, once again, I would select 0.05, which appears to be the default. Select your output range and hit OK. Then you look at the p-value. This is what you're looking at for the ANOVA. You compare the p-value to your alpha. And if the p-value is greater than the alpha, then you cannot reject the null hypothesis. And if the p-value is less than or equal to the alpha, then you must reject the null hypothesis. Now remember, the null hypothesis is there are no difference in the means between the three groups. That it's just randomness, that total payroll does not influence making the playoffs. So I said, okay, that's a nice, you're explaining it to me, but I'm kind of a visual kind of guy. Can you explain it to me by working it through Excel for me? It'll be really great, okay? So you said okay. Okay, so you wanted me to explain what I did in Excel to do, how to do the ANOVA. Well, you can see the data here for the years 2010 through 2021. We have the teams that made the playoffs, the 10, and in the earlier years, the 8 teams that made the playoffs. And this is a count of those teams that made the playoffs. For example, in 2021, 4 of the teams were in the top 10 payroll, and 4 of the teams were in the middle 10 payroll, and 2 of the teams were in the bottom 10 payroll. So to perform your analysis, you go to Data, and then from there, you go to Data Analysis. And we're going to go to this first one here, ANOVA single factor. Right there, single factor. You click OK, and then it asks for the range. Well, I'm going to take the range right here, including the headings. So let's select the range here, including the headings. So there's from here to here, we go all the way across, we select the range. Now here I'm organizing it by rows, so I better click on rows. My alpha is at 0.05. I'm clicking on the labels because I did pick up column A. And I'll put the output range, I'll put it, say, right over here in front so we can take a look at it. And I'll click OK. Now, there's a lot of interesting information about counts and sums and averages and variances, and those are all part of the calculations the computer does. But the value we're going to be looking at here is the p-value, and this p-value here is very small, 0.000646. Well, this is well under the 0.05% threshold, very much under 5%. So that means that we must reject the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is that all of the teams are equal. They're statistically the same. The payroll doesn't matter. It's the teams win or lose based on randomness. So this disproves that. This proves the opposite, that winning is represented by the payroll. And that's what I did. And that's the end. All right, bye-bye. Okay, I see what you did there. Okay, that makes sense. So you rejected the null hypothesis and you concluded that the conventional wisdom is correct. Okay, payroll does make a difference. So what else can you conclude? So you showed me this slide you put up here. So let's see, what are you doing here? Well, you explained to me that there's 30 teams in Major League Baseball. We did this analysis for 12 years. So that's a total, if you multiply one times the other, 30 times 12 is 360 teams/years. And we'll get to that in a minute. Now over here, the summary of the 12 years was that the highest paying teams, in those 12 years, there was 52 teams that made the playoffs in the postseason that were in the highest paying. 37 in the middle range and 27 at the lowest paying. You can see how it's skewed, obviously, up towards the highest paying. Well, arithmetically, you take the 52 divided by 360 to the right is called winning to team years. That's 14%, 14.4%. The second number is 10.2%, and the lowest paying team is 7.5%. And, well, what does that mean? Well, once again, let's show you this slide. What those three numbers mean is that's the probability that teams in that category, the 10 teams in that category, that's their probability of going to the postseason. It doesn't necessarily mean your team, but if you're in that group, it's probably a higher probability that it may be your team. So for example, it's a 14.4% in the highest paying. And if you have, that's not that much, 14.4%, but it's still better than the middle paying group, which is 10.2%, 10.3%. And of course, it's a lot better than the lowest paying of only 7.5%. Obviously, you prefer to be in the higher categories of likelihood. Those percentages aren't that great, only a 14% chance of being there. However, if you want to move your team from the lowest paying to the mid-range level, you're going to get a lot of leverage there. By increasing there, your group goes from 7.5% to 10.3%. That's a whopping 37% increase. And if you move your team from that mid-range to the highest paying group, you're going to move from 10.3% to 14.4%. That's a 40% increase. And of course, if you hurdle from the lowest paying to the highest paying, you're going to leap by a 92% increase. That the probability of being in a group, being in that group, and perhaps your team is in that group, of being a winner. So is it worthwhile? Well, it's a judgment call, but I think the evidence here suggests that you're going to, by taking action and moving to a higher level group, you're going to be in the company of winners, and your team could well be in that winner. All right, so I asked you, that's a really great analysis. That's a fascinating and I think useful analysis to do. So what was his name? Joe? What did he think of this? Well, Joe really liked it. And he asked if you could do other types of analysis for him. And you told me, yeah, you can. But that first one was a freebie. Listen, if you want more analysis from me in a similar manner, you have to go with our firm. You have to go with our firm for taxation and for audits and for compliance work and for other type of work. And so Joe kind of looked at you and, kind of shook his head and scratched his chin and said you could go now. Well, a couple days later, you got called into a meeting for the partners. Partners called you in and they said, you know what? Joe wants to retain the firm for all of their audit work and all of their tax work and their compliance work, and they would like you to serve as their consultant for other matters too. And they were quite pleased about that. And you know what? That's why you are one ace accountant. All right, I think we should give you a round of applause. All right.